Thank you very much for coming. It's really a pleasure to welcome you all here for this very interesting afternoon. So it is my honor to welcome all of you to the Library of Congress in this partnership with the Embassy of Brazil. So we're going to start the event. Ambassador Maria Luisa Viotti, Brazilian ambassador to Washington, will say a brief remarks, and then we are going to pass on to Professor João Cândido Portinari for his presentation, and I'm sure we're all going to enjoy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and thank you so very much for joining us this evening for this very special event. I wanted to thank Rebecca Roberts, Deputy Director of the Library Events Office, Suzanne Shadow, Chief of the Latin America, Caribbean, and European Division at the Library of Congress, our dear friends, João Cândido Portinari, founder and guiding spirit of the Portinari Project, and his wife, Maria Portinari, who are here with us. Our friend Marisa Lago, who is also here with us this evening. She is the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade and a great supporter of arts and culture and a great friend of Brazil. I wanted also to acknowledge Henry Widener, whose connection to Brazil resonates deeply and makes him, in our eyes, a fellow Brazilian. I don't know if Henry is here. So it's really a very special moment for us to be able to host this event together with the Library of Congress as part of a series of cultural events celebrating the bicentennial of diplomatic relations between Brazil and the United States. And so a special thanks goes to the dedicated team at the Library of Congress who brought this project to fruition. And the endeavor to invite João Cândido Portinari, son of the great artist Cândido Portinari, to share insights on his father's murals has been a cherished project for us at the Brazilian Embassy since its inception last year. This is because no other artist has reflected Brazil's life, culture, and social issues so well as Portinari. At the same time, his focus on the struggles of everyday life speaks to universal human experiences, making his art relatable beyond national borders. His ability to capture the human condition, including joy, suffering, and resilience, resonates with audiences worldwide. Portinari's murals at the Library of Congress celebrate Latin American culture and history, showcasing themes of unity and diversity, including the struggles and triumphs of Latin American communities. They serve as a symbol of the importance of cultural exchanges and of collaboration and understanding between nations. And thus, they are a fitting moment for our bicentennial celebrations. We are deeply grateful to João Cândido Portinari for having embraced this project. And for those who do not know him yet, I should note that he is a brilliant mathematician, educated in France and here at the United States at the MIT. And after earning his doctorate and spending a decade abroad, he returned to Brazil to help establish the mathematics department at the Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, where he was a professor for many years. But most importantly, he has dedicated his life to the task of chronicling and safeguarding his father's artistic legacy, making it accessible to everyone. The Portinari Project endeavors to preserve our cultural heritage and the national memory encapsulated in significant works of art. Among its many achievements is the Catalogue Raisonné, which is a fantastic publication that was issued maybe 2 decades ago. So João will help us delve into the rich narrative of the murals adorning the walls of the Hispanic room, the reading room here at the library. And he will also talk about Portinari's art and his collaboration with the library. After his presentation, I will be pleased to invite all of you to join us for an open house where you may admire Portinari's splendid works and partake in activities designed for our younger guests. Thank you very much. And now, João Cândido, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here at the Library of Congress. It's an honor and a great pleasure to be here. I thank the Library of Congress for this privilege, and I'm also grateful to Ambassador Maria Luisa Viotti, Ambassador of Brazil to the United States, and her staff, especially Fernando Sena and Iberê Barbosa. And I am also deeply grateful to Henry Widener from the library and the staff of the library for their invaluable and kind assistance. A special thanks to Rebecca Roberts, Deputy Director of the Library Events Office, and Suzanne Shadl, Chief of the Latin American, Caribbean, and European Division, for their expertise and support in making this event possible. I would also like to thank my old friend Pamela Howard-Regendine, former Field Director at the Library of Congress office in Rio de Janeiro. I recently met Paul Losch, the current Field Director in Rio, who told me that Pamela had retired. Time flies, but good memories remain. And of course, I'm grateful to my colleague Guilherme de Almeida, Chief Coordinator of the Portinari Project Educational Division and the War and Peace 2025-2026 project, for his invaluable contributions to this work. Last but not least, I hope you'll forgive me for relying on my notes today. My English may be a bit rusty, but my enthusiasm for Portinari certainly is not. This is Villa-Lobos, for those who don't know. Villa-Lobos and Portinari were very good friends. Today, we explore the remarkable legacy of Cândido Portinari, a legacy that intertwines art, history, and a profound yearning for peace. From the majestic murals here at the Library of Congress to the monumental War and Peace panels at the United Nations, Portinari's art speaks to the human spirit and our shared quest for a better world. Join me as we journey through Portinari's life, his art, and his enduring message of peace, culminating in the exciting new War and Peace 2025-2026 project. This is a very loved kind of music in Brazil called chorinho, the choro. Jorge Amado, one of Brazil's most beloved authors, whose words have resonated with readers in 49 languages, eloquently captured the essence of Portinari and his profound connection to the Brazilian people. And now I would like to offer you my contact. If you'd like to delve deeper into any aspect of his life, his art, and the 45-year-old work done at the Portinari Project or the War and Peace Project, please don't hesitate to reach out. I welcome your questions. I will be happy to connect. You can scan this code to easily save my email address. I look forward to hearing from you. Portinari's impact extended beyond the canvas. He touched the hearts of many, including renowned Brazilian poet Carlos Drummond de Andrade, one of his closest friends. So I would like to invite you to hear together with me a poem by Drummond. He made this poem when Portinari died in 1962, a few days later. So this is set up the climate, for our presentation.
Entre o cafezal e o sonho, o garoto pinta uma estrela dourada na parede da capela, e nada mais resiste à mão pintora. A mão cresce e pinta o que não é para ser pintado, mas sofrido. Entre o sonho e o cafezal, entre guerra e paz, entre mártires, ofendidos, músicos, jangadas, pandorgas, entre os roceiros mecanizados de Israel, a memória de Giotto e o aroma primeiro do Brasil, entre o amor e o ofício, eis que a mão decide. Todos os meninos, ainda os mais desgraçados, sejam vertiginosamente felizes. Agora, há uma verdade sem angústia, mesmo no estar angustiado. O que era dor é flor, conhecimento plástico do mundo, e por assim haver disposto o essencial, deixando o resto aos doutores de Bizâncio, bruscamente se cala e voa para nunca mais a mão infinita, a mão de olhos azuis de Cândido Portinari.
Our next image takes us to a place that holds a lot of significance for me, and indeed for many who value cultural heritage, the Library of Congress. This photo captures a special moment for me. It was taken in 1941. I was 2 years old, the year my father created the murals that grace this very institution. As a 2-year-old, I had the privilege of accompanying him during his creative process, witnessing firsthand his dedication and passion. He would go to work on the murals every day, sometimes taking his lunch with him, while we stayed at home. We lived in a black neighborhood. I'm not sure I remember the house itself anymore, but I do remember the first time it snowed there, and we all ran out into the street, mesmerized by the falling snow. Returning to the Library of Congress today, I feel a profound sense of connection to my father's legacy and a renewed appreciation for the power of art to transcend generations. When I returned in 1979, not as a child accompanying my father, but as the founder of the Portinari Project, the library graciously documented this visit in their information bulletin, highlighting the launch of our mission to ensure that Portinari's art and its powerful ethical and humanistic message remains accessible and continues to inspire positive change in the world. 21 years later, in 2000, I had the honor of returning once again to share the ongoing progress of the project with the library community. Portinari's rise to prominence in the US unfolded over several years, marked by a series of achievements. I'd like to show you 7 important moments that were connected to the United States. We'll now explore these key moments tracing his path from promising artist to internationally recognized master. Portinari's journey in the United States began with a prestigious accolade, the Carnegie Prize.
In June 1935, the Carnegie Institute of Pittsburgh in the United States, commemorating the centenary of the birth of its founder, Andrew Carnegie, extends an invitation to Brazil to participate in the International Exhibition of Paintings in Pittsburgh. This marks the first time since the founding of the Carnegie Prize that Latin American artists are invited to participate. In this exhibition, 365 works are presented, representing 21 countries, from artists such as De Chirico, Van Dongen, Kissling, Utrillo, Derain, Vlaminck, Salvador Dali, Dufy, Picasso, Matisse, among others. The renowned critic Emily Janor of the New York World Telegram writes, Portinari's Coffee, a vast canvas with a strong sense of mural painting, is not only the best painting among the group of Brazilian exhibitors, but, in our opinion, one of the most beautiful works among all the 365 paintings exhibited this year. Portinari wins the second honorable mention, a distinction exactly equal to that obtained the previous year by Salvador Dali and 2 years later by Kokoschka. This award will open doors for Portinari in North America and has an intense impact in Brazil.
It's no chance that this canvas depicts a coffee farm. He was born in a coffee farm, the son of poor Italian immigrants, a family of 12 children. He was the second. And he had no instruction, formal instruction, just 3 years in elementary school, because he had to help the family to get the coffee out of the trees, you know. Following the Carnegie Prize, Portinari's reputation continued to grow, leading to a significant commission, the 1939 New York World's Fair.
In 1938, Portinari was commissioned to paint 3 panels for the Brazilian Pavilion at the New York World's Fair, designed by Oscar Niemeyer and Lucio Costa. There, he met the journalist Florence Horn, who introduced him to American artistic circles. The good neighbor policy of the U.S. sought to strengthen ties with Latin America through cultural exchange. Portinari created 3 works representing different regions of Brazil: Jangadas do Nordeste, Rafts of the Northeast, Cena Gaucha, Gaucho Scene, and Noite de São João, St. John's Eve.
These monumental works captivated audiences at the World's Fair, further solidifying Portinari's presence in the American art world. Portinari's success at the World's Fair paved the way for an even greater milestone, the one-man show at MoMA in 1940, his first solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. The exhibition, titled Portinari of Brazil, drew immense crowds, with over 2,000 people attending the opening night, including prominent figures like Nelson Rockefeller, Arthur Rubinstein, Elena Rubinstein, Alfred Barr, and Lincoln Kirstein, alongside artists and celebrities from Hollywood. It was a resounding success, capturing the attention of the American public and critics alike. The New York Herald Tribune featured Portinari and his work, highlighting the significance of this solo show. And here is a familiar face, the little boy that you see there. A younger version of myself accompanying my father on this remarkable journey. Portinari's growing acclaim in the United States led to another significant milestone: the first book published on his life and art by the University of Chicago. That's surprising, isn't it, that the first book was not published in Brazil, but in the United States. This book introduced this Brazilian artist to a wider American audience. The book, though it also drew criticism from figures like art critic Doris Bryan, solidified Portinari's position as a major figure in the art world and paved the way for further exhibitions and commissions. Portinari's commitment to social justice and his ability to portray the human condition with empathy were increasingly recognized, leading to a special invitation. In 1941, Portinari received a heartfelt invitation from Howard University, here at Washington. I was there yesterday, and I'm going to be there tomorrow for a little lecture about this relationship. You know, it's an historically black university here in Washington, for those who don't know. So please, the next slide. This is Howard University. And I've chosen to show you the letter that Portinari received from Alonso Adler, who was the curator of the art gallery of the Howard University. The letter emphasized Portinari's deep feeling and interest in non-white people, recognizing the power of his art to connect with the African-American community. This exhibition, held in 1944, marked a significant step in Portinari's growing recognition and his commitment to social justice. The Howard University exhibition attracted a very special guest. You guess who is this very special guest? Next slide, probably it's already there. Yes, the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. And this is a letter that the curator, Alonso Adler, wrote to my father, saying that Mrs. Roosevelt liked very much the exhibition. And she was going to visit the murals here at the Library of Congress, that were here since 1941. Mrs. Roosevelt was deeply impressed by Portinari's work and even expressed her intention to visit the murals here at the Library of Congress, as you can see in this letter from the gallery director. We were thrilled to have Mrs. Roosevelt as the first guest on the evening of the opening. Mrs. Roosevelt's well-known interest in art and social justice further emphasized the significance of her visit. And now we arrive at a pivotal moment in Portinari's American journey, his commission to create the very murals that grace the walls of the Library of Congress. His voice is Portinari's voice that was cloned with artificial intelligence. We thought that it would be nice for you to hear his voice, not a narrator.
These frescoes are the best thing I've ever done in my life. Everything I know about painting, I poured into the 4 panels of the Library of Congress. I unloaded all my energy into them. I am satisfied. I worked freely, a great enthusiasm. All of it was inside me, and I just let it all out. I felt that these themes were mine. I had already mastered them. I needed to execute them as a salve. Before painting catechism, I read all the Jesuit letters. Anchieta Nobregal, Manuel de Paiva, Luis Dagree were men who suffered, who struggled. The Jesuits entered the wild forest, mingled with the indigenous people.
I hope you could guess that he was speaking English, not Portuguese. Let's now delve into 2 of the individual panels, each a masterpiece in its own right, beginning with Pioneers. Pioneers marked the entrance into the forest, you know. These are aspects that are common to all America, you know, to not only to Brazil, all the Americas, you know, the discovery of the land, the mining of gold, the teaching of the Indians, the catechesis, you know, and the entrance into the forest. It's also called Pioneers. Can we hear about it, Guilherme?
Their hands, like those of the Bandeirantes, were hands of heavy labor, large and misshapen. The feet that trod on stones and through swamps had to be tough and flat. Look at this Bandeirante lying flat on the ground. He's drinking water. Look at his hand. He has a severed finger. It has to be that way, doesn't it?
Next, we turn our attention to the mining of gold, a powerful depiction of labor and the pursuit of wealth. Some people think that this is the most beautiful one.
In this work, once again, there is a violent excitement. The symbol of the worker's hand is used in the most varied patterns, raised, gesturing, grasping. The style is impressionistic in form, for the features of the miners are ill-defined. The noses are triangles of swift lines, the fingers are unfinished like staccato notes. Impressionistic in the colors, in the brilliant brushstrokes, in the paint of the boat, in the hair of the blacks, in the gleam of the gold, and in the reflection of the fish. This painting marks the widest evolution of the painter's mural style through the dissolution of form, of color, and is more clearly related to his recent oil paintings. As Mr. Archibald MacLeish declared in a letter to President Getulio Vargas, these panels by Portinari represent a highly original and important contribution to the American arts.
I should say something about Robert Smith. Perhaps not all know who was Robert Smith. He was the first Brazilianist, and he was the one who suggested to the librarian. The librarian at that time was an eminent poet, American poet, Archibald MacLeish. And Robert Smith suggested to Archibald MacLeish that he should invite a Latin American living painter to decorate the reading room of the Hispanic division. The mining of gold stands as a testament to the resilience and strength of the workers who shaped the Americas. Now let's see, now we'll see how Portinari's stay in the US comes to an end. Now we are now in January 1942. It was the year of Pearl Harbor, Japanese attack, and this forced the US to enter the Second World War, and Portinari had to leave and return to Brazil. And he wrote this letter to a very important Brazilian intellectual, Mário de Andrade, where he says, "I have finished the murals at the Library of Congress. I wish you could see them. I believe it to be the best work I've ever done." Later on, when he painted the War and Peace murals at the United Nations, he changed his mind and he said that those were the most important works that he'd done, but not denying the first love, you know. Though war brought Portinari's time at the library to a close, his murals remain. They stand as a testament to his artistry, his vision of the Americas, and a symbol of cultural exchange that transcends conflict. As we conclude this exploration of the Portinari murals, I'd like to share with you a heartwarming letter I received from a key figure in their creation. In 1979, shortly after my second visit to the Library of Congress, Professor Lewis Henke, who at the time Portinari painted the murals was the head of the Hispanic division, wrote to me. He was instrumental in bringing Portinari to the library and ensuring he had all the conditions necessary to create his art. His words beautifully reflect on the significance of Portinari's work and the impact it had on those who witnessed its creation. Now I would like to share with you this letter. You know, it's a very moving letter. Professor Lewis Henke was at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst at that time.
Dear Mr. Portinari, the Library of Congress officer most responsible for the project that brought your father to Washington to paint the splendid murals at the entrance to the Hispanic Room there was the late Dr. Robert C. R. Smith. He was then the assistant director of the Hispanic Foundation, which was the division of the library devoted to Che culture of Brazil, Portugal, Spain, and Spanish America. Dr. Smith had been trained in the history of art at Harvard University, MA and PhD, and had already started his distinguished career in the field of Brazilian and Portuguese art. His whole life was spent teaching and writing. At his tragic death a few years ago, he left his entire fortune, which was considerable, to Harvard University to establish in honor of his mother the Nancy Clark Smith Chair for the Language and Literature of Portugal. Dr. Smith felt that the Center on Hispanic Culture in the National Library of the United States should have some example of work from a living artist of Latin America, and proposed that your father be invited to Washington to paint in the Hispanic Room. The Librarian of Congress at the time, Archibald MacLeish, the eminent poet, strongly approved the idea and approved the necessary administrative arrangements. Thus was initiated the project, which made possible the Candido Portinari paintings, which have given joy and stimulation to so many visitors to the Hispanic Room over the years. Two incidents connected with your father's painting stick in my memory, one related to the architect of the Capitol, and the other concerned with the building superintendent of the Library of Congress. The architect had to approve all building construction and architectural changes on Capitol Hill, whether in the buildings of the Congress, the Supreme Court, or the Library of Congress. He enjoyed so much legal authority that even the senators were afraid to oppose the architect. He insisted on having your father prepare preliminary sketches of the paintings he had in mind, cartoons they were called. Once this was done, Dr. Smith and I were horrified to learn that the architect did not fully approve the sketches and proposed certain changes. Artists are usually individualists and cherish their independence. Moreover, here was a Yankee official presuming to tell a noted Brazilian painter what to do. I well remember the night in my home when I had the terrible responsibility of reporting the architect's decision to your father. He carefully studied the alterations proposed by the architect, declared them to be desirable, and accepted them on the spot. We were all enormously relieved and slept soundly that the building superintendent of the library was a rough and ready Irish American who had all the physical arrangement for the library building under his jurisdiction. He did not have the legal authority of the architect, but he had so much real power that even the heads of departments in the library were reluctant to cross him. He of course knew no Portuguese, and Dr. Smith and I trembled when we thought what might happen when your father would call for some special preparation of the walls before painting began. Would there be a confrontation? Would an insensitive American bureaucrat refuse to sympathize with the needs of the painter? Then a miracle occurred, or at least we looked upon it as a miraculous event. For this rather small Brazilian artist and the burly superintendent became great friends, though they had no common language in which to communicate their thoughts. If I, as the director of the Hispanic Foundation, had asked the superintendent to change the walls, the answer would have been a curt no. But when your father wanted this done, there was no problem. When Dr. Smith explained what the painter wanted, the superintendent had the work accomplished at once, and anything else that your father wanted, he got. At once. By some strange chemistry, these two unlike human beings became fast friends, and the superintendent passed through the Hispanic room almost every day while the work was in progress to make certain that the painter from far off Brazil had everything that he needed. In conclusion, may I add that we are all delighted to learn of the studies you are planning on your father's work, and hope that these incidents of long ago in the Library of Congress will help your readers to understand something of the human qualities of Candido Portinari. With best wishes, Louis Henke, Professor of History, Emeritus, University of Massachusetts at Amherst.
Professor Henke's words beautifully capture the enduring significance of these murals, but Portinari's legacy extends far beyond these walls. It's a legacy that faced challenges, just like the artist himself. Now I would like to tell you a little bit about the Portinari project, not too much, but just a little bit so that you understand the challenges that we had to face. So all starts with this, how should we call this, something that calls for justice, you know. The biographer of Portinari, Antonio Calado, the author of this compelling comparison, was a man of many talents. He was a journalist, playwright, novelist, whose experiences gave him a unique perspective on Brazilian society and its history. His insights into Tiradentes, therefore, come from a place of deep understanding and engagement with Brazil's past and present. This stark comparison to Tiradentes, a national hero in Brazil who fought for independence from Portugal and was executed in 1792, highlights the fragmented state of Portinari's legacy and the urgent need to retrieve and make accessible the entirety of his artistic works. The first newspaper article about the Portinari project had a very interesting headline, you know, a paradoxical headline, in fact. This headline from one of the first articles about the Portinari project perfectly captures the challenge we faced. Portinari, the painter, renowned yet hidden. Despite his fame, most of his works were inaccessible, locked away in private collections. The Portinari project has relentlessly sought to change that. In the body of the article, its author asks, More than 95% of the work of the greatest contemporary Brazilian painter is now hidden from public view, locked away in private collections. What has happened to the legacy of a man who dedicated his life to passionately portraying the soul, the people, and the essence of Brazil? The early press coverage sparked a wave of interest and support for the Portinari project. In fact, a New York Times article in 1983 even featured my own perspective on the importance of preserving Portinari's legacy. So this is a page from the New York Times, 1983. There is a commentary also about this.
The New York Times, May the 30th, 1983. João Candido said that as a youth he had purposely distanced himself from the monumental presence of his father, spending 10 years in France and the US. Like his father, however, the inspiration to return to his roots came to him in Europe. I was in Amsterdam in 1978, and I went to visit the Van Gogh Museum, he recalled. I watched with fascination as Dutch people of all ages and backgrounds took in Van Gogh, learned about their own national personality. I thought to myself, how sad to think that in Brazil we have nothing like it.
The next few minutes will provide a visual journey through the early years of the Portinari project, showcasing the challenges we faced, the milestones we achieved, and an unwavering passion that has driven our mission to bring art and a human and ethical stance to the people and inspire new generations. Let's take a look.
Brasil, 1979. Depois de 15 anos de governo militar e 10 anos de AI-5, o país vivia finalmente um momento de abertura política. A anistia, o relaxamento da censura, a perspectiva de eleições e um silêncio compulsório começava a cessar. Surgiam iniciativas de resgate cultural para recontar a história do Brasil. Foram criados projetos como o CPDOC da Fundação Getúlio Vargas, o Projeto Pixinguinha e o Projeto Portinari. O Projeto Portinari nascia de uma constatação urgente. 17 anos depois da morte de um dos maiores artistas que o Brasil teve nesse século, suas obras não possuíam nenhuma catalogação e sua memória se perdia diariamente. Uma equipe liderada por João Cândido Portinari, filho do pintor, começou um trabalho de detetives para tentar reunir as informações sobre as obras de Cândido Portinari e as memórias de sua época. Nascido dentro da área científica da PUC do Rio de Janeiro, o Projeto Portinari já apontava uma natureza multidisciplinar, reunindo métodos científicos, alta tecnologia e rigor histórico a serviço da arte e da cultura. O projeto começou com o levantamento de mais de 5.000 obras e de depoimentos de grandes brasileiros contemporâneos de Portinari, além de catalogar mais de 25.000 documentos. No processo de cruzamento de informações, muitos fatos vieram à tona e muito foi se descobrindo sobre como aprender a ler Portinari. Essas informações deram um novo sentido à obra e revelaram razões muitas vezes escondidas por trás das tintas.
No caso de Portinari, não havia museu nenhum, não havia nenhum catálogo. Os livros escritos sobre a obra e vida dele estavam esgotados. Não se tinha ideia do paradeiro das obras. Nunca havia sido realizada uma exposição retrospectiva. A história do Projeto Portinari, eu acho que começa nesse momento, né? Quer dizer, nessa volta e na perplexidade, né, de como começar um trabalho desse. A sensação que foi nos tomando, né, era de que você estava lidando com a própria essência da nacionalidade. Quer dizer, você estava lidando com o tecido mais sutil, com a trama mais profunda, né? Que é essa trama que revela a imagem da alma, né? daquela sociedade onde apareceu aquele pintor que a retratou. Então, isso foi realmente um processo quase que insensível. Quer dizer, você foi sendo tomado por aquilo, né? E esses 20 anos passaram assim.
Ao Projeto Portinari não interessava fazer um juízo de valor sobre a obra do artista, mas sim criar uma base de informações imparcial e de livre acesso para pesquisadores e público em geral. O projeto sempre buscou ter uma face pública, seja através de exposições, publicações e palestras proferidas de norte a sul do país e no exterior durante mais de 15 anos. interessava criar uma educação visual e histórica da formação da cultura moderna brasileira, da qual Portinari é um dos expoentes.
1928. Portinari retrata Cavalcante, governador de Pernambuco. Este é um dos 10.000 documentos localizados pelo projeto Portinari, que está resgatando para a memória nacional o trabalho do nosso pintor maior. Agora, o último esforço no Brasil para que nada sobre Portinari fique esquecido. Se você possui alguma obra ou documento, informe seu nome e endereço para a Caixa Postal 500, Rio de Janeiro.
O projeto Portinari mobilizou pessoas e instituições por toda a parte para sua empreitada. Contou com o patrocínio da FINEP e o apoio de empresas como a Varig, a Kodak e a IBM. Com a iniciativa da Rede Globo e da Fundação Roberto Marinho, foram realizadas chamadas e campanhas em favor do projeto que resultaram em mais de 3.000 cartas mandadas para a Caixa Postal 500. Fruto dessa mobilização, quadros importantes dados como perdidos foram encontrados pelo país inteiro, além de informações que ajudaram a compreender o contexto das obras.
I realized that we don't have enough time to speak about the Portinari project in more detail, so I ask your permission to jump ahead, so that I can tell you a little bit about the War and Peace project, which is also important. But I would not like to leave out of this presentation our educational activities, which is the main priority of the Portinari project now, is children and young people. So I'd like to just show you one example of this action. The Portinari project is committed to making art accessible to all, bringing its transformative power to diverse communities. To give you a glimpse into the impact of our education initiatives, I'd like to share a short video showcasing our work with riverine communities in the Pantanal. At more than 42 million acres, the Pantanal is the largest tropical wetland and one of the most pristine in the world. We've done similar work in other Brazilian rivers, like the Amazon and its affluents. So let's see what we did in the Pantanal.
Você já viajou esse Brasil inteiro fazendo essas exposições interativas. Que experiência mais te emocionou nessas viagens?
Olha, há tantas experiências, né? Uma que me emocionou muito foi no Pantanal Mato Grossense. Nós fomos com a exposição Brasil de Portinari montada numa chalana da Polícia Militar, subindo o Rio Paraguai. Nós saímos de Porto Murtinho, fomos até Corumbá. Íamos parando em pequenos povoados, não era nem cidade, eram pequenos povoados, e eu sentia, quando entrava aquelas crianças no barco para ver a exposição, eu sentia assim uma emoção grande, porque era assim, a primeira vez que eles estavam vendo, e talvez a última, né? Então, a gente tinha que dar tudo possível ali, né, para aquelas crianças. E como eles se identificavam, e nós chegamos a um povoado dos índios paraguaios, chamados índios chamacoco, porque a gente tanto visitava povoados brasileiros como os da margem paraguaia também. E o índiozinho entrou e foi direto para o índio, uma cabeça de índio do Portinari. E ele olhava para nós e olhava para a cabeça de índio, eu acho que ele estava pensando, ué, alguém já tinha me visto antes e me pintou assim?
Now, let's turn our attention to the last part of our presentation, a new endeavor that builds upon these foundations, the War and Peace 2025-2026 project. Here you have the War and Peace panels in the natural scale. You can see the people there. They are 14 meters high each. Portinari's plea for peace resonates even more strongly today, unfortunately, amidst the ongoing conflicts and suffering across the globe. I took some images from the media today to show how these panels still are true, after more than half a century. And this text is from a Portinari speech in Buenos Aires in 1947. Portinari's words, written over 75 years ago, still ring tragically true today. These images of suffering challenge us to confront the realities of war and injustice, and to renew our commitment to building a more peaceful future. Portinari's message deeply resonated with those who understand the urgent need for peace and justice. In fact, on the 50th anniversary of the War and Peace Panel's installation at the UN, our President Lula da Silva echoed this sentiment in his opening address to the General Assembly of the United Nations. Let's hear his powerful words.
Senhoras e senhores, ao entrar neste prédio, os delegados podem ver uma obra de arte presenteada pelo Brasil às Nações Unidas há 50 anos. Trata-se dos murais Guerra e Paz, pintados pelo grande artista brasileiro Cândido Portinari. O sofrimento expresso no mural que retrata a guerra e nos remete à alta responsabilidade das Nações Unidas de afastar o risco de conflitos armados. O segundo mural revela que a paz vai muito além da ausência da guerra. Pressupõe bem-estar, saúde e um convívio harmonioso com a natureza. Pressupõe justiça social, liberdade e superação dos flagelos da fome e da pobreza. Não é por acaso que o mural Guerra está colocado de frente para quem chega e o mural Paz para quem sai. A mensagem do artista é singela, mas poderosa. Transformar aflições em esperança. Guerra em paz. É a essência da missão das Nações Unidas. O Brasil continuará a trabalhar para que esta expectativa tão elevada se torne definitivamente realidade. Muito obrigado.
Years later, the significance of war and peace continued to be recognized on the world stage. In 2015, during the ceremony marking the panel's return to the UN after their first global journey, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon delivered a moving speech highlighting their enduring relevance. Let's listen to his message.
War and peace are more than magnificent works of art. They are Portinari's call to action. Thanks to him, all leaders who enter the United Nations see the terrible toll of war and the universal dream for peace. As you know, Portinari himself was warned by his doctors to stop working on the murals because he was becoming sick from the lead paint. But he refused, and he literally gave his life to finish these masterpieces. He never lived to see them installed. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a moment of silence to honor the memory of this visionary artist. Thank you. Portinari is no longer alive, but his legacy will live forever at the United Nations. Let us realize his vision and move from war to peace.
I realize that I run out of time, but I ask your permission for one more slide, because I think it's important to show the new War and Peace projects that will start next year. So this is the last one.
In the words of Candido Portinari, I consider war and peace to be the best work of my life. I dedicate it to humanity. This sentiment was shared by Dag Hammarskjöld, Nobel Peace Prize winner and then Secretary General of the UN, who said that these panels were the most important work of art donated to the UN. Our journey begins in May 2025 at the prestigious Palazzo delle Esposizioni in Rome. We'll be there for a triple celebration: Italian immigration to Brazil, the Jubilee of the Catholic Church, and 200 years of bilateral relations between Brazil and the Holy See. In November 2025, the panels shall find a new home in Belém, in the state of Pará. The initiative aims to meet the urgent need for peace, not only between nations and people, but also between them and nature. Our journey will culminate in a historic moment, the exhibition at the National Museum of China in January 2026. This is the fulfillment of a long-held dream, to bring Portinari's greatest work, a Brazilian clamor for world peace, to the hearts of the Chinese people. We believe in China's potential to make a significant contribution to building a more peaceful and collaborative world. This exhibition not only celebrates the grandeur of the war and peace panels, but also crowns the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Brazil and China, a milestone reached in 2024, a union of cultures in the name of art and peace.
巴西的绘画风格呢，多种多样的特色还是非常鲜明的。我个人呢，比较喜欢的画家是坎蒂多·波提纳里，他的作品是非常迷人的，比如说像《孩子们放风筝》等，其中都能够表现出巴西人民的这种人文关怀，以及人性的光辉，还有巴西的风土人情，这些都是让我颇为感动的。然后也是我们中国人都比较喜爱的。
Finally, after their passage through China, the panels return to their permanent location in the Grand Entrance Hall of the United Nations General Assembly Hall in New York. There they remain as silent witnesses to the debates and decisions that shape our world. The journey of the War and Peace panels is more than just a geographical one. It is a journey through time, through human emotions and aspirations, through our collective yearning for peace. Their impact is immeasurable, not only in the world of art, but also in the field of international relations. As we reflect on their journey, we are reminded of Portinari's own words, "I dedicate them to humanity." And indeed, they are a gift to us all, a gift that continues to inspire and challenge us, a gift that brings out the best in us, a gift that calls us to choose peace over war, understanding over conflict, and unity over division.
Now we come to the last slide, please. And I'd like to say one thing more, if you allow me. I brought our latest book, which is the chronobiography, illustrated chronobiography of Portinari, that we would like to donate to the Library of Congress. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you have, I don't know if we're allowed to have questions and answers. Yes? 10 minutes, okay.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. It's really inspiring to see how the work of Portinari and his Brasilianidade comes across the borders and it can influence the world. And my question is, every time you see the work of Portinari, the way he represents the Brazilian people, he always paint them with thick arms, thick legs, like strong people. Why he did that way? Can you explain about it? It's something that always intrigued me.
Well, I think this is something from his youth, from his childhood, in fact, because he was among the laborers in coffee farms. They were all bare feet, and they had very large feet and very strong hands. And I think also that it's a symbol of hope, of dignity, and of energy. He didn't want to paint the poor people in Brazil as people that were, how do you say, derrotados, that were defeated, but people that had energy, had a lot of potential, hope. I think it's maybe the right word, which is a word in English that's different from its meaning in Portuguese. It's compassion. Compassion in Portuguese refers sometimes to pity, to have pity of someone. But we know that compassion in English is not that. It's empathy. It's to feel the pain of the next person, And I think maybe this is the explanation for your question. I'm not an expert in Portinari.
In São Paulo once when it was traveling around. And I believe at that time that it was being restored and then they were showing to the public. Can you talk a little bit about the restoration? How did it work?
Yes, this is very important. The exhibition you saw was in 2012 at the Memorial of the Latin America in São Paulo. Before that, we restored the War and Peace panels. It was a demand that the United Nations made for the loaning of the panels. They asked that we should restore them. They had been half a century, and there's very large glass panels where the sunlight came in. So we built a restoration atelier open to the public that received children from all over the country, schools, and we had physical chemistry, on more modern equipment to show how do you restore a big work of art. We had 18 restorers that were coordinated by 2 professors of the University Federal do Rio de Janeiro. And it was very moving, 4 months to restore the panels. And children and schools and children and schools, it was fantastic. It was
a very crowded event.
Yes.
I was touched by the reference that your father was being poisoned by the lead on the painting, on the material, while doing the paintings at the United Nations. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and why did he decide to actually risk his health in finishing the work?
That's a very good question. Nando is our dear friend, He's been here in Washington for many years, but it's a dear friend that comes to Brazil sometimes, and we are happy to be with him. I think that the opportunity for someone who his whole life was dedicated to these values, of nonviolence, of fraternity, of compassion, community spirit, respect for life, he has the opportunity to send this message at the United Nations. That was the biggest opportunity he had his whole life. The doctor said, "You cannot go on painting." They gave an interview in the newspaper. The headline was, "I am prohibited to live," because for him to paint and to live were synonymous. So I think, I cannot prove that, but I feel that he knew that if he continued painting War and Peace, he would die. I'm practically certain that he knew that. But he could not miss that opportunity, for someone that gave his life for these values, So he decided to disobey the doctors and keep on painting, and in fact, it was the last big work, and a few years later, he died, I don't know if that was your question, because I must tell you, I have become deaf of this ear, and sometimes I don't hear. It was that? Okay. I'm making an effort to hear it. Okay, Nando.
Got time for 2 more questions? 2 more?
Just while we have a moment and people are thinking of their questions, I'd like to thank Madam Ambassador for working with the Library on us, and I especially want to thank you, João Cândido, for your generosity, not just in the donation to the Library of Congress, but for your time here today, for your commitment and your father's commitment, and if I understand correctly, maybe an uncle's commitment.
Yes.
To those really beautiful murals that those of us who work here in the library, and especially in the Hispanic Reading Room, have the joy of seeing on a daily basis. They really have an incredible impact, and I appreciate your family for the generosity of sharing that talent with us.
Thank you so much.
And I love the fact that you brought your expertise to AI to share your father's voice. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I see we got a question over there.
Hi, thank you for that wonderful talk and the beautiful murals. Your family will have a legacy in this building forever. I wonder if your father was familiar with the murals in the Mexican Cultural Center and that muralist, and what he thought of them, if indeed he was familiar.
I'm sorry, I didn't get
the Mexican Cultural Center here in Washington has a 3-floor series of murals done by a muralist. Perhaps you're not aware of that, but they're extraordinarily beautiful in the way that your fathers were, and I was curious if he was aware of them or not.
Me ajuda, Pinga, eu não estou entendendo. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Portinari was friends with Siqueiros and Rivera. Tamayo, Orozco, Frida Kahlo, he did not have relations with, but Siqueiros and Rivera, yes. He actually sent a telegram protesting the prison of Siqueiros one time. We still have that telegram in our archives at the Portinari Project. I don't know if that's what you were asking, but his relation with the Mexicans were not frequent or regular. He did an exhibition, an important exhibition in Mexico City in 1958 at the Biennale, Mexican Biennale. He was given a room of honor there, and it was very important that there was a very important art critic at that time that did a wonderful text about that exhibition.
and you were very, very impressive. Can you tell us a little bit, was he a religious person? Was it the commission? What was the focus of those enormous murals in the church in Batatais?
Well, Batatais was very important because he was baptized at that church, the Church of Batatais. And in 1952, he was commissioned to make a religion. This is a very important question because sacred art, Portinari's sacred art, is much lesser known than his art in general. No? But Israel Pedrosa, who was a very important art critic and painter and historian, he said that the San Francisco da Pampulha, for instance, St. Francis at the Church of Pampulha, is the most important sacred art of the 20th century. He said that. It was a time where sacred art was believed to be already past, and even mural art. And this St. Francis emerges as a possibility of new renewal of possibilities, aesthetic possibilities, So the sacred art, it's very important, your question, because we're going to Italy with War and Peace. But because of the two ephemeris, the 200 years of relations with the Holy See and the Jubilee of the Catholic Church, we're planning to take along also a sample of Portinari's sacred art. I think it will be the first time that, for instance, the Via Crucis, I don't know how to say that in English, the Via Crucis is like that, is going out of the Pampulha church. It's never been lent, So we're going to take that to Rome. And we hope, they say that they will have 32 million people extra in Italy in the next year, So it's very important.
I was especially touched by how much the population loved the art of, there was the community, the people of the Thais, they loved the art, the appropriate art. Thank you very much.
There is a paradox, I think I should mention that. And it's a paradox that was was researched by one of the most important Catholic philosophers in Brazil, Alceu Moroso Lima. He asked, how can a communist paint sacred art with such fervor, and then he wrote a very beautiful text, several pages, where he explains what happened to him when he visited Portinari's family in the small town where he was born. There were only 3 streets, I remember, when I was a kid there. And then he saw these simple people, and he compared these people as the bread that comes out of the oven, all warm, And he says, there's no paradox. Portinari, Christian painter. It's a very, very nice text.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's about all the time we have for Q&A. I want to remind everybody the murals are freely available to the public, 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday in the Hispanic Reading Room. Again, I'll have another round of applause.
Thank you,
for
Harry.
Jean-Claude.
Thank you so much.